The morning began in the quiet neighborhood of Lakewood Ridge. The sky was soft blue, the wind was gentle, and most people were still inside their homes enjoying peaceful breakfast time. But peace never lasted long when Karen was around. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her. They didn't even call her by her real name anymore. They called her HOAKaren, because she treated the homeowners association like her personal kingdom. Mark was making coffee when he heard a strange tapping sound outside. At first, he thought it was just a bird hitting the window. But the taps became louder, sharper, and more aggressive. He walked to the front window and pulled the curtain. His heart dropped a little when he saw her Karen standing on his lawn with a clipboard and her famous red pen. Karen never visited someone's house without causing trouble. She stood with her hands on her hips, wearing big sunglasses even though the sun was barely up. She held her clipboard like a police officer holding a ticket book. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't greeting anyone. She was inspecting. Mark whispered to himself, "Oh no, not today." He opened the door, and before he could say a word, Karen snapped her fingers sharply. "There you are," she shouted, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "I have been waiting for you." Mark blinked. Good morning, Karen." "It is not a good morning," she declared, shaking her clipboard. "You and your wife have violated the HOA rules. Multiple rules. Very serious rules." Mark tried to stay calm. He knew from experience that arguing with Karen only made things worse. "What rules, Karen?" he asked softly. "Oh, don't act innocent with me," she said, lifting the clipboard. She flipped through the pages like she had 100 violations ready. "First of all, your grass is too green." Mark stared at her. "Too green?" "Yes." "It looks suspicious," she said firmly. "No one else on this street has grass that green. You must be doing something wrong." Mark almost laughed, but he controlled himself. Karen was not joking. "Second," she continued, pointing her pen dramatically, "your fence is too new. It blinds my eyes in the morning sun." Mark turned and looked at the fence. It was a normal fence. Not shiny, not glowing, not special. Just a clean wooden fence. But Karen acted like it was made out of gold. "And third," she added, "your car is too clean. It makes the other houses look messy." Mark rubbed his forehead. "Karen, that's not a real rule." Karen gasped loudly, like he insulted her entire family. "Are you questioning me? I am the head of the HOA rule enforcement team." "You made that title yourself," Mark said, trying not to smile. Karen ignored him. She walked around the house, taking pictures from every angle. She crouched down like a detective looking for fingerprints. She took notes aggressively, writing so fast that her pen squeaked on the paper. Every few seconds she muttered to herself. "Rule breaker, violation, unacceptable." Mark watched her circle the house like a shark circling a boat. He had a feeling this was not just about grass or fences. Karen looked more irritated than usual. Something else was bothering her, but he didn't know what. Inside the house, Mark's wife, Sarah, was cooking breakfast. She heard the noise outside but didn't think much of it. She was used to Karen's voice carrying through the neighborhood like a megaphone. Karen came back to the front yard and stood in front of Mark again. "I am giving you an official HOA warning," she announced. "For what?" Mark asked, still confused. "For disturbing the peace," she said proudly. "Karen, I didn't do anything." "Oh? You think I didn't see it," she said dramatically. She pointed at the window. "I saw movement inside your house." "Suspicious movement." Mark frowned. "That's my wife. She's cooking." Karen narrowed her eyes. "Cooking? At this hour?" "It's 8 a.m. Karen gasped again. "Exactly. Who cooks at 8 a.m.? Normal people cook at 7 or 9. Only shady people cook at 8. Mark couldn't believe what he was hearing. Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice as if she was sharing secret information. Listen, Mark. I know something bad is happening in your house. I can feel it. What bad thing? He asked. Karen's voice dropped even more. Your wife. What about my wife? Mark asked slowly, trying to understand where this madness was going. Karen touched her sunglasses dramatically. She is hiding something. I've been watching. That sentence alone made Mark realize today was going to be a long day. Karen, he said calmly, she's not hiding anything. She works long hours. She barely has time for anything, let alone hiding something. But Karen wasn't listening. She had already created a full investigation in her mind. Don't try to fool me, she said. I know danger when I see it. I will call 911 if I have to. Mark froze. Call 911? For what? For your wife's behavior, she said confidently. She looks suspicious. And she didn't wave at me yesterday. Mark almost laughed again. Karen, she was tired yesterday. She didn't even see you. Excuses. Karen said loudly. I'm writing that down too. She scribbled something on her clipboard with such force that her pen almost broke. A neighbor across the street peeked out from behind a curtain. Another neighbor opened their door a crack to listen. Everyone knew when Karen caused drama, it was better than watching TV. Karen suddenly raised her voice for the entire street to hear. This house is a threat to the community. I am calling the police. Mark panicked. Karen, please don't call 911 for no reason. Karen stepped back with a shocked expression, acting like a movie villain being challenged. You dare tell me what to do? I am the HOA. I have authority. She took out her phone and dialed 911 without hesitation. Mark's stomach dropped. His heart beat faster. This was not good. This was not normal. This was Karen going to the extreme. He tried to stop her, but she turned away dramatically and raised her hand like she was a queen commanding soldiers. Yes, hello, she said loudly into the phone. This is an HOA emergency. Mark covered his face with his hands. Karen continued, yes, send officers right away. Something dangerous is happening in this house. The woman inside is acting suspicious. Inside the house, Sarah turned off the stove and walked toward the front door, wondering why Mark hadn't come back inside yet. Before she could step outside, Karen shouted again. I demand immediate action. I am HOA certified. She wasn't. But she believed she was. Mark looked at the street and saw a police car turning the corner with flashing lights. Karen smiled like a queen watching her army arrive. She whispered proudly. Now we'll see the truth. But the truth Karen didn't know was something that would flip everything upside down. Because in a few minutes, the officers would discover that the dangerous woman inside the house was actually their own state police commander. And Karen had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The police car rolled down the street slowly, its lights flashing blue against the quiet houses. Most neighbors stopped what they were doing. Curtains opened. Garage doors paused halfway. Everyone knew that when police arrived in Lakewood Ridge on a calm morning, it usually meant only one thing. Karen. And once again, she stood proudly in the middle of the sidewalk like she had summoned the entire force herself. She adjusted her sunglasses and fixed her posture. She looked ready for a magazine photoshoot about HOA Hero of the Year. Her chin lifted high, her smile wide, and her clipboard held like a golden trophy. Mark felt the opposite. His stomach twisted with worry, and he kept rubbing the back of his neck. He knew this was going to be bad. He knew the truth would shock everyone. But what scared him more was that police officers wouldn't understand what was happening until they met his wife. The police car stopped right in front of their house. Two officers stepped out, Officer Clark, a tall man with calm eyes, and Officer Rivera, a woman known for her strict but fair attitude. Karen rushed to them immediately, almost tripping in excitement. Officers! Officers! Thank God you're here, she shouted dramatically. Officer Clark raised his eyebrows. Ma'am, this is 911. Please remain calm. What's the emergency? Karen placed her hand on her chest like she was about to faint. It's terrible, she said. Just terrible. I caught a dangerous situation. Officer Rivera looked at Mark, who stood quietly near his door. She noticed he didn't look panicked or guilty. He just looked tired. What kind of situation? Rivera asked. Karen leaned closer and whispered loudly enough for the whole neighborhood to hear, the woman inside that house, she is dangerous. Both officers glanced toward the house. Officer Clark asked calmly, what kind of danger, ma'am? Karen pretended to think deeply, even tapping her chin. Well, she didn't wave at me yesterday. Officer Rivera blinked. Is that the emergency? No. Karen snapped. There's more. I saw suspicious movement in their kitchen today. Very strange movement. What kind of movement? Clark asked. Cooking at 8 a.m. Karen declared. Officer Rivera looked at Karen like she had grown a second head. Ma'am, cooking breakfast is not a crime. But it's unusual. Karen insisted. No one cooks at 8 a.m. on a Thursday. She must be hiding something. She is breaking HOA rules. Clark exchanged a look with Rivera. This was clearly not an emergency. Mark stepped forward, trying to help. Officers, I'm sorry this happened. There's no danger. My wife is inside cooking. That's all. Karen gasped, pointing a shaking finger at him. Don't listen to him. He is covering for her. They are both suspicious. Probably criminals. Officer Clark sighed. Ma'am, making breakfast is not suspicious. And HOA rules are not criminal laws. Karen stomped her foot like a child. But I am the HOA. I have authority. Officer Rivera asked gently, Ma'am, did you see any weapons? Hear yelling? See a fight? No, Karen muttered. Did you see anything illegal happening? No. Did you see any danger at all? Karen hesitated, then straightened up. Yes. The danger is her attitude. And the grass. The grass is too green. Clark and Rivera stared at her, both confused. Finally, Officer Clark said, All right, we need to check on the homeowner to confirm everything is okay. Karen smirked proudly. Good. Take her away. I want her removed from this neighborhood immediately. I am ordering an eviction. You can't order that, Officer Clark said. Karen raised her chin even higher. Watch me. The officers ignored her and walked toward the door. Inside, Sarah had just dried her hands. She heard the police outside and took a slow breath. She wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She was simply annoyed. This wasn't the first time someone misunderstood her job. But it was the first time someone called 911 because she cooked breakfast. Mark opened the door for the officers, and Sarah stepped into the doorway. The moment the officers saw her, their expressions changed completely. Officer Rivera's eyes widened. Officer Clark straightened immediately. Their shoulders stiffened like soldiers suddenly standing at attention. Commander? Officer Clark said slowly. Karen froze. Commander, she repeated in shock. Commander of what? Commander of the cooking club? Officer Rivera shook her head. Ma'am, she is Commander Sarah Lawson of the State Police. Karen stared at Sarah, confused. What? No. That's impossible. She looks too normal. Sarah crossed her arms, calm but firm. Is there a problem, officers? Clark pulled off his hat respectfully. We received a 911 call reporting a dangerous situation. We didn't know it was your residence, ma'am. Sarah looked at Mark, then at the officers. Dangerous? In my house? Before the officers could explain, Karen pushed herself between them. Yes. Yes. There is danger. She is suspicious. I want her removed. She didn't wave at me yesterday. Sarah looked down at Karen like she was a child having a tantrum. That's why you called 911, she asked. Karen puffed her chest. Yes. And I demand action. Immediate action. Officer Rivera stepped forward, voice firmer now. Ma'am, filing a false emergency call is a serious offense. Karen scoffed. You can't punish me. I'm HOA. I'm above you. Officer Clark closed his notebook. Ma'am, nothing puts you above state law. Karen's mouth fell open. Sarah stepped closer, her voice calm but powerful. Karen, emergency services are for real danger. You wasted police time. That is not allowed. Karen pointed at Sarah weakly. You can't talk to me like that. I have authority. No, Sarah corrected gently. You have a clipboard. That's not authority. Neighbors laughed quietly from their windows. Karen turned red. But. I was trying to protect the community. Officer Rivera shook her head. Ma'am, calling 911 because you don't like someone's cooking schedule is not community protection. Karen looked around desperately. This is unfair. I didn't know she was the commander. Sarah raised an eyebrow. So if I wasn't a commander, calling 911 on me would be okay? Karen froze. She hadn't thought that far. I didn't mean, she mumbled. Officer Clark sighed. Ma'am, we will have to file a warning for a false emergency call. You can be fined for this. Karen's face changed from proud to terrified in 2 seconds. A fine? No. Wait. I was only trying to help. Sarah stepped back with a calm sigh. Officers, thank you. I appreciate your quick response. You can file the report. Both officers nodded respectfully. Karen stared at Sarah, realizing her mistake in full force. She hadn't just complained to the police. She had tried to evict the state police commander. And she was about to learn that her fake authority didn't stand a chance against real authority. The street was completely silent now. Even the wind seemed to pause. Karen stood frozen like a statue. Her sunglasses slipped down her nose, but she didn't dare touch them. The officers stood in respectful posture, heads slightly lowered. And Sarah. Sarah simply stood with calm confidence, as if she had seen this situation 1,000 times before. Mark watched from the doorway, still half shocked and half amused. He knew Karen had dug her own grave, but he didn't expect her to bury herself this fast. Officer Rivera cleared her throat. Commander Lawson, we apologize again. We didn't know this was your residence. Sarah nodded politely. It's fine, Officer Rivera. You responded to a call. You did your job. Karen blinked slowly, trying to process the word commander. She whispered it quietly to herself, like it was a new word she had never heard in life. Calm, man, der? Officer Clark glanced at her. Yes, ma'am. She is the state police commander. She oversees multiple departments. Karen looked at Sarah again, her eyes wide. But, she looks normal. Sarah smiled softly. I am normal, Karen. I just have a serious job. Karen stepped back, almost tripping over her own feet. No, this can't be happening. I thought you were just some woman who doesn't follow HOA rules. Sarah tilted her head. So you called 911 because of HOA rules? Karen nodded weakly. Yes. That, and your suspicious cooking behavior. Mark covered his face to hide his laugh. Officer Rivera stepped forward, her tone firm now. Ma'am, you should know that calling 911 for personal issues is illegal. You wasted emergency resources. Karen's lips trembled. I didn't know. I didn't know she's the boss of police. Sarah looked directly into Karen's eyes. Karen, the law doesn't change based on who I am. Even if I was a regular person, you still couldn't call 911 for cooking breakfast. Karen swallowed hard. But I thought I was helping the community. Officer Clark sighed. Ma'am, cooking is not a threat. To green grass is not a threat. A clean car is not a threat. None of these are emergencies. Karen's face twisted like she had swallowed a lemon. But I'm the HOA. I make rules. I control this neighborhood. Sarah crossed her arms. You don't control the police. Karen looked offended. Well, you don't control the HOA. Sarah raised one eyebrow with a calm smile. Actually, I could. If the HOA breaks the law, it becomes my concern. That sentence hit Karen like a bucket of cold water. Her entire posture changed. Shoulders dropped. Chin lowered. Suddenly she looked much smaller, more like a child caught stealing candy than a powerful HOA enforcer. But. I didn't know, Karen whispered again. I know you didn't, Sarah said gently. But ignorance is not an excuse. Karen's voice cracked. I only called 911 because you didn't wave at me yesterday. Sarah blinked. I was on a 16-hour shift yesterday. I barely saw the road in front of me, Karen. I didn't even see you. Karen stared at the ground like a scolded student. Oh. Mark stepped closer and added quietly, she was exhausted. She came home and went straight to bed. Karen peeked up. You should wave more. Sarah laughed under her breath. Waving is not a law. I don't get arrested for not waving. Karen mumbled, in the HOA, everything is a law. Officer Rivera gave a small cough. That is not how HOAs work, ma'am. Karen glared at her clipboard, suddenly unsure of her own rules. It was supposed to be like a safety thing. Mark shook his head. A safety thing about breakfast? Karen puffed her cheeks and muttered, it was an intuition. Sarah stepped forward, her tone steady. Karen, listen. I'm not angry. But there are real emergencies in this city. People who really need help. When you call 911 for something like this, you take officers away from real danger. Karen's eyes watered. I didn't think about that. You should, Sarah replied. You have responsibility as a member of this community. People trust you to help. Not cause panic. Karen let out a long shaky breath. I messed up, didn't I? Officer Clark nodded. Yes, ma'am. You messed up. Karen finally removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from embarrassment so strong that it almost looked painful. I don't want a fine, she whispered. Please, can we skip the fine? Officer Rivera replied, we cannot skip official procedure. You called 911 under false information. At minimum, it requires a written warning. Possibly a fine depending on review. Karen looked like she was about to faint. A fine? But I am HOA. HOA members don't get fines. Sarah replied calmly, HOA members get fines if they break real laws. Karen took a step back. Then another. Then another. She held her clipboard close to her chest like a shield. I need to think, she said quietly. Sarah nodded. That's a good idea. Karen looked at her one last time. For a moment, she didn't look angry or bossy or controlling. She just looked confused. Lost. Like someone who had lived too long inside her own little world. She whispered, Commander. I didn't know who you were. Sarah answered with a calm smile, Karen, you don't need to know my position. You just need to respect the law. Karen nodded slowly. I understand. Then, for the first time in the neighborhood's history, HOAKaren turned around quietly and walked away. Neighbors watched from their windows with wide eyes. No one had ever seen Karen silent before. It felt like witnessing a miracle. Officer Clark turned to Sarah. Commander, would you like us to file the report now? Yes, Sarah said. Thank you for your work. The officers nodded respectfully and walked back to their car. Mark stepped beside Sarah. Well, that was something. Sarah sighed. It's always something with her. But deep inside, she knew the drama wasn't over yet. Karen was quiet now, but quiet people often return with twice the trouble. And knowing Karen, she was already planning her next move. The police car hadn't even driven away yet when the neighborhood began buzzing like a hive waking up. Curtains fluttered. Doors cracked open. Neighbors whispered among themselves. Everyone had seen HOAKaren walk away quietly, something that had never happened before. Mark and Sarah stood by the doorway as Officer Clark and Officer Rivera walked toward their car to finish paperwork. But they didn't leave immediately. Something felt unfinished. Something wasn't right yet. Officer Rivera stopped halfway down the driveway and turned back. Commander Lawson, she said politely, before we file the report, we need a few more details. Protocol. Sarah nodded. Of course. Mark stepped aside as the officers approached again. Karen was already far down the sidewalk, but she kept turning her head every few seconds like she expected the officers to call her back. She clutched her clipboard tightly, almost hugging it. Her walk wasn't confident anymore, it was the slow, shaky walk of someone who had witnessed her imaginary authority collide with reality. Officer Clark opened his notebook. Commander, we need to confirm if this is the first time this neighbor has made a false emergency call. Sarah exchanged a look with Mark. Mark answered quietly, no. It's not the first time. Not even close. Officer Rivera raised an eyebrow. There were more incidents? Sarah nodded. She has called community security 3 times. Animal control once. And last month, she tried calling code enforcement because Mark hung laundry in the backyard. Officer Clark scribbled notes. That sounds excessive. Mark folded his arms. She once tried to report our mailbox for being too straight. Officer Rivera blinked. Too straight? Yes, Mark replied. She said it made the other mailboxes look lazy. Sarah sighed. She tries to control everything. She creates problems that don't exist. And now she's involving 911. Clark nodded seriously. This actually helps us understand her behavior. We may need to recommend a deeper review. Down the street, Karen froze. She had been pretending not to listen, but she clearly heard that last sentence. She spun around, waving her arms. Excuse me. I can hear you. Am I being reviewed? She shouted. Officer Rivera didn't look at her. Ma'am, please stay back. We are still investigating. Karen gasped dramatically and placed a hand on her chest. Investigating me? But I was the one who made the call. Sarah answered calmly, exactly. Karen's face wrinkled like a shrinking balloon. She started pacing in tiny circles, muttering to herself, no, this is backwards. I should be the one investigating them. I am HOA. I am the law. Officer Clark ignored her and continued questioning Mark and Sarah. Has she ever threatened eviction before? He asked. Mark nodded. Many times. For random things. For example. Before he could finish, Mrs. Jenkins from next door stepped outside, holding her tiny dog. Oh, thank goodness. Officers, please add me to that report, she said loudly. Karen once tried to evict me because my dog sneezed too loud. Officer Rivera blinked. Sneezed too loud? Mrs. Jenkins nodded. She wrote it on a pink slip and taped it to my door. Karen yelled from down the sidewalk, sneezing can be a nuisance. Officer Clark closed his eyes slowly as if trying to regain patience. More neighbors came out. Mr. Daniels waved a gardening glove. She tried to find me because my flowers were too orange. And me, shouted another neighbor. She said my driveway was too driveway-like. Officer Rivera whispered to Clark, this is turning into a community protest. Clark nodded. A very organized one. As neighbors gathered, Karen panicked. She waved her clipboard like a shield. Stop. You're all exaggerating. I am the HOA. I only want what's best. Mrs. Jenkins raised her hand. Karen, you told my husband his haircut violated HOA standards. Mr. Daniels added, you told my teenage son his skateboard hurt community vibes. Karen stomped her foot. Vibes are important. Sarah stepped forward. Karen, no one is attacking you. They're just telling the truth. Karen pointed at Sarah, trembling. You are turning everyone against me. Sarah shook her head calmly. No, Karen. You did that yourself. The officers took notes rapidly. Every new complaint added more weight. More evidence. More reason to question Karen's behavior. Officer Clark finally said, Ma'am, please come here. We need to speak with you. Karen stiffened. She didn't want to come. In fact, she looked like she wanted to run away. She whispered, No. I can't. I can't stand near her, she's the commander. Officer Rivera spoke gently but firmly, Ma'am, this is not optional. Karen dragged her feet toward them like a child called to the principal's office. Once she reached the group, Officer Clark looked at her directly. Ma'am, we have heard several reports of false complaints from you. This includes calling emergency services for non-emergencies. This is serious. Karen curled her fingers tightly around her clipboard. But I was only trying to help the neighborhood. Sarah replied softly, Karen, help doesn't come from creating fear. Or calling 911 for breakfast. Or sneezes. Officer Rivera added, and if this behavior continues, the HOA board itself may need to review your position. Karen's eyes widened in horror. My position, she whispered. Yes, Clark answered. You could lose your authority. Karen wobbled. But this neighborhood needs me. Mrs. Jenkins crossed her arms. No, Karen. This neighborhood needs peace. Mr. Daniels added, and sanity. Another neighbor shouted, and fewer rules. Karen's breathing sped up. She looked like she was drowning in humiliation. Her eyes darted left and right, searching for anyone to defend her. But no one did. Not a single person. And for the first time ever, Karen realized she was alone. Officer Rivera closed her notebook. We will file the warning today. You will likely receive a formal notice soon. Karen whispered, this isn't fair. Sarah stepped closer, her voice low but steady. Karen, fairness is following real rules. Not making your own. Karen looked at her clipboard for the first time like she didn't recognize it. The tool she once held like a weapon now felt useless. Meaningless. Empty. She whispered, I didn't know I was hurting people. Sarah answered gently, then now is your chance to change. Karen didn't reply. She simply turned around and walked away slowly. No shouting. No threats. No drama. Only silence. The officers watched her go, then turned to Sarah. Commander, Clark said, we'll finalize everything. You'll receive a copy. Sarah nodded. Thank you. But deep inside, she knew something else. Karen may have walked away quietly, but this story wasn't over. People like Karen didn't disappear. They regrouped. They planned. They tried again. And Sarah had a strange feeling. Karen's next move would be far bigger. After the officers finished their notes and walked toward the police car, the neighborhood slowly began to return to normal. Some people went back into their homes, whispering excitedly. Others stayed just a few minutes longer, pretending to water plants while secretly watching everything unfold. But Karen was still frozen halfway across the sidewalk. She stood there gripping her clipboard like it was a life jacket in a storm. Her shoulders shook slightly, and her eyes darted between Sarah and the officers like she was waiting to wake up from a bad dream. Sarah watched her. Not with anger. Not with revenge. But with something deeper, quiet authority. Mark walked beside Sarah and whispered, "You handled that really calmly." Sarah gave a tired smile. "It's part of the job. People panic. People overreact. But Karen, she doesn't understand boundaries. And today she crossed too many lines." Mark nodded. "You want me to talk to her?" Sarah shook her head. "No. I will." Officer Rivera walked back toward them. "Commander Lawson, before we leave, there's one more thing. Since she made a false 911 call, we need to warn her officially in front of you. It's procedure." Sarah nodded. "Go ahead." Karen took one small, scared step back. Then another. "No, please, not in front of her," she whispered, barely audible. But Officer Rivera called out, "Ma'am. Come here. Now." Karen flinched and slowly walked back, her shoes scraping on the concrete like she was dragging heavy weights behind her. She stood in front of the group, avoiding everyone's eyes. Her voice trembled. "I already said sorry. Isn't that enough?" Officer Clark opened his notebook. "Ma'am, a false emergency call is very serious. We are giving you an official warning today. If you do it again, there will be fines. And possibly charges." Karen swallowed hard. "Charges? But I'm HOA." Sarah answered clearly, "Karen, HOA doesn't make you above the law." Karen blinked. "But everyone has to follow my rules." "Your rules," Sarah said calmly, "are community guidelines. Not legal power." Karen stared at her clipboard again. The papers inside looked useless now, just scribbles and made-up violations. "But, if I don't enforce things, the neighborhood will fall apart." Sarah stepped closer. "No, Karen. Neighborhoods fall apart when people force control, not when people live peacefully." Karen looked lost. Truly lost. Officer Rivera continued, "Ma'am, you also need to understand you cannot demand evictions. Only the law can handle that. HOA can only make suggestions, not force people out." Karen's mouth dropped open. "What? No, that can't be right. I made eviction forms myself." Mark whispered to Sarah, "She made her own forms?" Sarah whispered back, "Of course she did." Officer Clark sighed. "Those forms have no legal meaning, ma'am." Karen looked betrayed, like the universe lied to her. "So? I have no power?" she asked quietly. Sarah looked directly at her. "You have influence. But you misused it." Karen's eyes filled with panic. She stepped closer to Sarah, voice shaking, "Commander. I didn't know you were, well. You. I thought you were just another rule breaker." Sarah's expression remained calm and steady. "Karen, you need to treat everyone with respect. Not just people with important jobs." Karen's lips trembled. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Sarah looked gently at her. "But you did. You scared people. You embarrassed your neighbors. You wasted emergency resources. And you turned the HOA into something people fear." For the first time, Karen didn't argue. She just listened. Really listened. Mark stepped forward, his voice soft but firm. "Karen, look around. People don't feel safe with you. They feel watched. Judged. You're supposed to protect the community, not control it. Karen lowered her head. A tear slid down her cheek, not dramatic, not loud, just a silent tear from someone finally facing the truth. I didn't know, she whispered again. I didn't know I made everyone uncomfortable. Mrs. Jenkins from next door stepped forward hesitantly. Karen, no one hates you. But you need to relax. You don't have to check everything. You don't have to fix everything. Just, let us live. Karen wiped her cheek. I thought, if I didn't enforce rules, things would collapse. But maybe I was wrong. Sarah gave a slow nod. There's a difference between protecting and controlling. The wind blew softly. For a moment, the entire street seemed to breathe. Karen looked at Sarah, not with anger or pride, but with a small, quiet request. Can you help me understand things better? I mean, how to be fair? Sarah nodded. If you're willing to change, yes. Karen took a deep breath. I will try. I don't want to lose the neighborhood. I don't want everyone to hate me. Officer Rivera spoke gently, trying is the first step. Officer Clark closed his notebook. We're done here. We'll finalize the warning, but as long as you don't repeat this behavior, it won't escalate. Karen nodded slowly. Okay. It was the softest okay she had ever said. The officers walked back to their car. The engine started. The lights turned off. And soon the police vehicle disappeared around the corner. But even after they left, the air still felt thick with tension and something else. Something new. Something uncertain. Karen held her clipboard like she wasn't sure whether to keep it or throw it away. She looked at Sarah and whispered, "Thank you, for not yelling at me." Sarah smiled gently. People yell when they lose control. I don't. Karen sighed. I guess. I still have a lot to learn. Sarah replied, we all do. Karen nodded one last time, then slowly walked home, not with arrogance, not with long confident steps, but with a quiet humility she had never shown before. Mark exhaled. Well, that was unexpected. Sarah looked at him. She's shaken. But she needed this. Maybe she'll change. Mark chuckled. Knowing Karen? She'll probably bake cookies as an apology. Sarah laughed softly. Or she'll try to find the cookie sheet. But even while she joked, one thought stayed in Sarah's mind. Karen had accepted defeat for the moment. But people like Karen never stayed quiet forever. And Sarah was preparing herself for whatever came next. The next morning arrived quietly, like the neighborhood was holding its breath after everything that happened. Birds chirped. Sprinklers clicked on. Cars left for work. Everything seemed normal. But it wasn't. Because everyone in the neighborhood had seen what happened the night before. Everyone had heard the 911 sirens. Everyone had seen Karen's power crumble in front of Sarah. And today, no one was scared of her anymore. Inside her house, Karen stood in front of her mirror, staring at her own reflection as if she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her clipboard was still on the counter. Her violation forms were stacked neatly next to it. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel like picking them up. She whispered to herself, they think I'm a monster. Her stomach twisted. She didn't sleep. She kept replaying Sarah's words. You misused your influence. You scared people. You need to respect everyone. Karen pressed a hand over her eyes. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was trying to keep order. But the mirror reflection didn't agree. It looked tired. Broken. Unsure. Finally, she took a deep breath and stepped outside. And the neighborhood noticed instantly. People paused. People whispered. People moved away from her path. Karen felt every pair of eyes on her like small pins pressing into her skin. She walked faster. Then faster. Until she reached the HOA office room, a small building the neighborhood used for meetings. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing shakily. Inside, 3 HOA board members were waiting: Mr. Dalton, Mrs. Gray, and Nina. All of them looked uncomfortable. Mr. Dalton cleared his throat. Karen, we need to talk about last night. Karen forced a smile. Of course. I know things got a little dramatic, but I handled it, don't worry. Nina interrupted sharply. Handled it? Karen, you called 911 on a resident. Karen blinked. Well, yes, but it was necessary, right? She didn't follow the rules. Mrs. Gray folded her arms. Karen, she was standing in her own driveway. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. But she. Mr. Dalton slid a folder across the table. We collected complaints. From last night. From the past 3 months. From residents. About you. Karen froze. Her fingers trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were letters, printed emails, screenshots. Dozens of them. I feel watched. She yells at my kids. She threatened to fine me for having a guest. She follows me with her phone to record violations. She made me cry. She frightens my elderly mother. She tried to evict someone illegally. She abuses HOA power. Karen's throat tightened. She whispered, No, I didn't. I was just doing my duty. Nina leaned forward. Karen, what you call duty, everyone else calls harassment. Karen staggered back. Mrs. Gray continued, her voice steady, we trusted you to enforce rules fairly. But you acted like the entire neighborhood belonged to you. Karen felt her vision blur. I didn't realize. Mr. Dalton closed the folder gently. We are putting you on a mandatory suspension. Starting today. Karen gasped. Suspension? No. You can't. I am the HOA. Nina shook her head. Not anymore. Not until you learn to respect the community instead of controlling it. Karen felt her heart sink into her stomach. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. The board members stood, signaling that the meeting was over. But before they could leave, a knock sounded at the door. It opened slowly. And Sarah stepped inside. Karen stiffened instantly. Nina smiled slightly at her. Commander Lawson, we didn't expect you. Sarah nodded politely. I came because I heard about the meeting. I'm not here to punish Karen. I just want things to be better. Karen swallowed hard. Her voice came out small. Why, are you here? Sarah looked at her calmly. Because the neighborhood needs peace. And because you need help understanding how your actions affect people. Karen looked down. I didn't mean for things to get this bad. Sarah stepped closer. Intentions don't erase impact. Karen's chin trembled. I thought making rules strict would make everything safe. I thought everyone would appreciate it. Some things, Sarah said gently, can't be controlled with rules. Like respect. Trust. Or community. Karen wiped her eyes quickly. She didn't want anyone, especially Sarah, to see her cry. But it was too late. Her voice cracked. I don't want everyone to hate me. Sarah spoke softly, then listen. Learn. Change. The room fell silent. Mrs. Gray cleared her throat. Karen, we're not removing you permanently. Just giving you time to calm down. Reflect. Maybe reset your approach. Karen nodded weakly. It was the best she could do. The board dismissed themselves and left. Sarah remained. Karen stood alone, shaking slightly. I'm not evil. I swear I'm not. Sarah stepped forward. I don't think you're evil. I think you're overwhelmed. You tried to force order because you felt responsible for everything. Karen covered her face. I don't know how to stop. How do I change? Sarah spoke quietly, but firmly. Start with one thing. Stop treating people like problems. Karen dropped her hands slowly. She looked at Sarah. And for the first time ever, Karen didn't look like the HOA queen. She looked human. Small. Worried. Trying. I will try, she whispered. Sarah nodded. Good. That's all I wanted. Karen exhaled shakily. What if I fail? Sarah gave a calm smile. Then you get up. And try again. Karen felt tears spill again, not from fear this time, but from relief. She watched as Sarah walked toward the door. Before leaving, Sarah paused. Karen, the neighborhood doesn't want to fight you. They just want to live. Karen nodded slowly. I'll learn, somehow. Sarah gave one last small smile, then left. And Karen stood alone in the empty meeting room, holding the complaint folder against her chest. For the first time in years, she realized she wasn't in control. And maybe that was exactly what she needed. The sun began to set, painting the houses in warm orange and soft gold. The neighborhood was calm again, but something felt different, lighter, quieter, almost peaceful. Sarah stood on the porch with a cup of tea. Mark sat beside her, watching the sky change colors. Well, Mark said slowly, it feels like the whole street finally took a deep breath. Sarah nodded. Yes. But something tells me this isn't fully over. Mark smirked. You think Karen will cause trouble again? Sarah shook her head. Not trouble. But people don't change overnight. As if on cue, the sound of hesitant footsteps came from the walkway. Sarah looked up and saw Karen standing there. She wasn't holding her clipboard. She wasn't marching with authority. She wasn't angry or controlling. She looked nervous. Her hands were behind her back, and she kept shifting her weight like a child about to admit something big. Mark whispered, "Oh boy, here we go." Sarah stepped forward. Karen. You're here. Karen swallowed. I hope you don't mind that I came. Sarah shook her head. Not at all. Come in. But Karen didn't move. She stayed near the steps, like she didn't feel worthy of coming closer. I just wanted to say something, she said quietly. Something I've never said before. Sarah waited patiently. Karen took a deep breath. I'm sorry. For everything. For the fear. For the rules. For calling 911 on your wife. For acting like I owned everybody. Her voice cracked midway. She wiped her eye, embarrassed. I didn't know how much I hurt people until today, she continued. The suspension, the complaints, the way neighbors looked at me. It opened my eyes. Mark whispered to Sarah, this is the calmest Karen has ever been. Sarah gently nudged him, keeping her eyes on Karen. Karen lifted a small container from behind her back. It was a box of cookies, but the box was trembling in her hands. I tried baking, she said with a shaky smile. They might be terrible. But I wanted to fix things. Somehow. Mark whispered, shocking twist, Karen uses baking instead of threats. Sarah quietly elbowed him again. Karen took a small step forward. Commander Lawson. Sarah. I'm not asking you to forgive me today. I just want you to know I'm trying. Really trying. Sarah saw something fragile in Karen's eyes, something she had never seen before. Humility. Fear. Hope. Sarah walked closer. Karen, thank you for saying that. And thank you for coming here. Karen looked relieved, but only a little. I know I was hard on everyone. But I wasn't always like this. Sarah tilted her head. What changed? Karen took a long breath. My husband left 2 years ago. He used to manage everything: bills, repairs, neighbors. After he left, everything felt out of control. Her voice softened, almost a whisper. So I tried to control everything around me. The HOA was the only place where I still felt important. Where I felt needed. Sarah's expression warmed. Mark's softened too. Karen wiped her eye again. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was trying not to fall apart. For the first time, Sarah understood everything: the rules, the shouting, the clipboard, the obsession. Karen wasn't a villain. She was lonely. Lost. Trying to build a sense of order in a world that had stopped making sense to her. Sarah stepped closer. Karen, everyone deals with pain differently. But hurting others won't heal you. Karen nodded slowly. I know. And I want to be better. I really do. Sarah placed a hand gently on Karen's shoulder. You still have a place in this neighborhood, she said softly. But you need to earn trust, not force it. Karen sniffed. I'm ready to do that. Mark finally stepped forward. If the cookies don't kill us, we'll consider this a fresh start. Karen actually laughed, a small uncertain laugh, but real. She handed the cookies to Sarah. I hope you like chocolate chip. They came out weird. Weird is fine, Sarah said warmly. But just when everything felt peaceful, something unexpected happened. A voice called from across the street. Karen! Everyone turned. It was Mrs. Jenkins, holding her phone and waving it in panic. It's the HOA group chat. People think you got arrested. Karen's eyes widened. What? No. No, I didn't. I swear. Mrs. Jenkins hurried over. Someone posted a video of the officers talking to you. The rumor spread fast. Half the neighborhood thinks you were taken away in handcuffs. Karen shook her head in horror. No. That didn't happen. Sarah stepped forward. Let me see. She took the phone and watched the short clip, shaky, zoomed in, clearly recorded from behind bushes. The angle made it look like the officers were scolding Karen intensely. Then came the messages. She got arrested. She's banned from HOA forever. She's a criminal. Finally justice. Karen felt her stomach drop. Mrs. Jenkins sighed. People are being dramatic. You know how rumors spread. Karen looked helpless. I don't want everyone thinking I'm a criminal. Sarah handed back the phone calmly. Then we fix it. Karen blinked. How? Sarah smiled. With honesty. 10 minutes later, the neighborhood group chat buzzed again, but this time with a video posted by Sarah. She spoke clearly, with calm authority. Hello, everyone. This is Commander Sarah Lawson. There are rumors going around that Karen was arrested last night. That is false. The police were here because of a misunderstanding. Karen is not in trouble with the law. And she has taken responsibility for her actions. Let's please treat each other with respect and stop spreading false stories. The comments rolled in. Oh, thank you for clarifying. I didn't know. Sorry for believing the rumor. Karen, we hope you're okay. Karen read the comments with trembling hands. They don't hate me? Sarah smiled. Nobody wants you gone, Karen. They just want the real you, not the dictator one. Karen let out a shaky breath and whispered, thank you, for protecting me. Even after everything. Sarah nodded. Everyone deserves fairness. Karen looked around the quiet street. Maybe, this can really be a new beginning. Sarah nodded. It can. And for the first time in a long time. Karen believed it. She smiled, a small, honest smile. A smile that felt like the beginning of peace.